Tuesday, and welcome to the MSLead Chronicles. It's a podcast on a mission in medical affairs and leadership. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy, Chad Fellers, we're going to have casual talk about important topics and challenges in leadership, and we are so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MSLead Chronicles, where leaders develop leaders. I'm one of your hosts, Chad Fellers, along with my awesome sidekick who is back in action this week, Mary the Marvelous Morton. Mary, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. I missed you in our last episode. I was impressed, though. I think that we actually got it off the ground and have had a lot of good feedback. So apparently I learned how to press the record button and all that those kind of things. So
I knew you could.
I know. You gave me some responsibility, and I think I exceeded expectations with that. So
thriving.
That's right. So, I can't wait to get into our conversation today. We've been building kind of on this journey over the past several weeks, really, just talking about everything from leadership development to career paths and journeys. Mm-hmm. Today we're going to dig in a little bit with our guests about IDPs. So I guess I have a question for you first. I mean, are you down with IDP?
Stop.
I mean, come on. I used to have a hat that said OPP, right? So I was down with OPP. So,
Just
I mean,
don't say that. Don't say that. Do you know what that means?
Other people's property.
Oh, okay.
That's what well, I guess it'll be another lesson for some time, huh, Mary? Anyway, so why don't we get to this before we get regulated a little bit more? Why don't we get to introducing our special guest today? Why don't you kick us off, Mary?
Yay. Okay. So before we get too far down the line, I want to kind of start out by mentioning the upcoming MSL Society meeting, which I am thrilled to be at. So my buddy Tracy Johnson and I will be there to mix and mingle with all the medical affairs and field medical people. And the agenda looks incredible. And ironically, on the agenda, you are going to find some familiar faces to the ones you might be looking at or listening to today, as Kunal Ramani, who is our guest, who I'm going to tell a little bit more about in a sec. And my clever little co-host, Chad, will both be leading some sessions in Miami. So we'll get the band back together in a couple of weeks.
It's going to be a blast.
Yes, it will. So I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, one of my absolute faves, Kunal Ramani, who is, call him my transplanted co-Texan, as he got here, I guess, as fast as we could get him from California. But I even though you've been leading now for 3 years, I still consider you like one of the best rising MSL leaders out there. I've had lots of really intense conversations with you about, some leadership concepts. And I mean, I got to tell you guys, even like a year into being a people leader, you could tell he was born to do it. He's got everything's like all the wheels are turning in the right places. So I guess before we kind of get too deep into it, Chad's going to have some instruction for you on how we do things here. And I'll since you kind of teased the topic, I'll let you formally introduce our topic today.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So I guess you don't like my dad jokes or just analogies to music.
Not a dad joke.
It kind of falls flat like my dad jokes as well too. But nevertheless, I think there's at least one or two people that are listening and laughing or saying "bless your heart." I'm not really sure exactly, but anyway, let's get into it. So today, I'm really excited about this. Number one, I would echo everything that Mary said. while I've not had a chance to connect with Kunal as much to the same extent, he's certainly one that stood out to me. We were talking about it a few minutes ago. I'm not sure when the first time that we connected. Maybe it was the MSL Society. The last time we bumped into each other, I think, was at MAPS in New Orleans. I think the first time we may have connected was on like a Symbio hangout or a chat, but I'm not real sure. Nevertheless, Kunal, you are one that definitely sticks out, just from everything from your warm smile, approach, your intense active listening, all those types of things. So I know we're going to get into a great discussion today, and it really is around this topic of individual development plans. Now, I'm sure you remember our format here, and we always try to start with a couple of takeaways for the listeners in case they don't have time to listen to the entire conversation all in one setting, just to give them a clear understanding of what we're going to discuss today, and then maybe some ways they can even apply it. So with that, Kunal, what are some of your key takeaways that you want the listeners to walk away with today?
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and just the opportunity to be on this podcast with you both. We've connected professionally, and I just really admire the work that you both are doing. So thank you for providing a forum for leaders and teaching and sharing best practices so we have the opportunity to learn from each other. With that, as Mary and Chad had mentioned, my name's Kunal Ramani. I'm a PharmD by training. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about individual development plans. The main takeaways really is that it's a living document that provides you a formalized process that has buy-in from managers, organizational development, to really outline where you are currently, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there.
So I think we can stop period on just the warm opening that he said, and the thank you. No, seriously, really, we are really just a platform to be able to share some of the things that we've learned, both good and bad, and hopeful that others that may not make the same mistakes that we did, or even learn and kind of multiply. And just to see you in action already with this is really exciting and encouraging. I love the takeaways that you gave to us. So let's dig in a little bit more to that. Mary, why don't you kick us off with some of the questions?
Before we get too far, I kind of wanted to let everybody get a chance to get to know Kunal, kind of what makes up his identity.
I love it.
Who is Kunal?
So you're asking such a loaded question.
I know, but we're gonna give you a little more context. Like, okay. So you've been in field medical for 10 years. You've been in people leadership for about 3.
Yes.
So Chad and I were just talking about this. Like, well, what was like the epiphany for you that you wanted to lead people?
Yeah, I've done mentoring and coaching on the side in a non-formal format for probably 8 or 9 years to begin with. I had a formalized process with MSL Society, which I've been doing. But through all those experiences, just collectively, the passion for servant leadership is something that I really do follow. And I didn't necessarily know that was my leadership style until Chad put a name to it. So thank you for that. But realistically, just the ability to help people grow and achieve and get to where they want to be, and having the opportunity to do that at my current role has been fantastic and rewarding in ways that I couldn't even imagine. So I think I've always been like that. But again, the mentoring, coaching, guiding, and helping other people is just a core value of mine. So it was a perfect fit.
Awesome. Okay. So without putting you on the spot too much, and people get this question kind of in an interview sometimes, and maybe you've even asked it in an interview. So now I'm going to give it to you. What would Kunal's peers, or what words would they use to describe you?
Yeah, it's funny because I had this question. I was at a conference with some of my team, and just over dinner, had a similar discussion around what makes a good leader. And specifically, I think my strength is that I care genuinely, whether it's me taking a backseat to opportunities for my team, understanding what they want to do and how can I find resources, tools, or whatever that is to help them get them there. It's just a genuine interest in caring for the individual, not necessarily on a professional level, but personal as well. So just genuinely caring.
Well, I asked people who are friends of Kunal's, and these are the words that they told me: mentor, motivating, organized, great leader, cheerleader, and I saved this one for last, even though this wasn't the last one that was given to, because I think it's amazing. Trailblazer.
Interesting.
And so Tapan was the one who said that.
I
So you can
appreciate
thank
that.
him later, but I don't know. I think that's a pretty interesting one.
I love it.
So and if I'd like to ask just this one more question in
Hmm.
here, um, and it kind of goes on. We had the ask Chad anything. One of the questions that we asked of him and he answered. I'd like to get your thoughts on
For sure.
um, briefly, and then we'll get back. Well, I want to get into the IDP stuff. Um, so if you caught this particular question on the Ask Chat Anything, um, it was um, how how can a new manager figure out a way to make that transition to being a manager and have his what used to be peers see him as now their leader.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And having gone through that and been on the reverse side of a peer becoming a manager, uh, I guess I don't know any other way outside of the servant leadership method. Or I've seen good, I've seen bad, but the ones that I think to get buy-in is for them to understand it builds with trust, open communication, them understanding that you have their best vested interest no matter what. Um, and that you're, I would say, just as much, if not more, ingrained within their growth and whatever that means as much as they are. But I think it always starts with trust and open communication.
Well, shoot, that's a fantastic segue into the IDPs. So
Yep.
I know.
I'm gonna turn it over to Chad here a little bit.
So yeah, so let's dig into it because I can't agree with you more just about the opportunity to really to invest in others. When I think about just from my experience, some of the greatest accomplishments, I guess, if you would call them those, is seeing other people identify and then be in roles that they either didn't know about before, and being able to link what their giftings are to those and create a path for them to that, and seeing them be promoted, even if it was beyond just the MSL role. So that those types of things require intentionality, require investment, and really knowing your people and showing that they care. And so I love hearing kind of just these words that your teammates are describing you as, and the approach that you have. So part of that component really is around the IDP, and I this is a common thing, but let's I don't think it's utilized much, and I don't think people. Uh, I don't think companies always lay it out in a way that the individuals will actually prioritize it. So let's really kind of dig into this. So how long have you been doing IDPs for your team?
So for my team, in formal process has probably been 2.5 years, and that was rolled out. We had a really great HR business partner that saw some of the tools and resources within the platform that we use, but indirectly, probably about 8 years. Yeah. And the purpose really is, as I had mentioned initially, is giving yourself a roadmap on where you want to go. And through that open communication with your manager, you're able to identify what's working, what's not, what are the different tools and resources that I need to notch on my belt to get that next step. And also, it kind of eliminates all of the fluff of, since you have a core centralized theme that you're working towards, you can eliminate opportunities that may not align with that. And so through that process, utilizing the IDP formally again for the past 2.5 years. And I think that within that time, the strides that the team has made, then, and also with individuals that I mentor and coach who utilize this process and actually put it to action, has been, I would say, far more than the ones that don't utilize it.
So yeah, really good words there. When we flip it to really kind of your why, like
Hmm.
why you've prioritized it,
Yeah.
um, tell us a little bit more about that. How long have you been doing it for yourself? Was it something that was you were given a roadmap for from your company? Was it something that you just took initiative? Tell us the story with that, and how that's kind of you were able to leverage that when you were getting to where you are today.
Yeah. Throughout my life, I think a common theme has been doing it the hard way or figuring out things that I don't want to do. And through that whole process of this is not working, this is not working, I do kind of like this. I just stumbled upon something similar to an IDP. It wasn't the like formalized name for it, but that's when I started using it within mentoring and coaching and my career development specifically. And the reason why I thought it was beneficial is because for me specifically, it gave me a framework to do some self introspection. And that's really where it starts. Because it is an individual development plan, there is a lot of emphasis put on the individual. And that's probably the most important component to this, is that self introspection, really taking some sort of notice of what you want to do, what is it that you're looking towards, and how are you going to accomplish those. And so, with that first part, again, going through looking at different coaches, under like not understanding what a mentor, a proper mentor is, how am I choosing these individuals? There was a lot of trial and error that went into that process, but through different coaching, different like through AMA, American Management Association. I think that's probably where I had the first exposure to this idea at a previous company. And that framework really resonated with a formalized process because I think if there's given some structure, it helps narrow down your focus. For me specifically, there was a lot of things that I was ambitious about, a lot of things that I was looking towards. And for me, I saw that I started off in drug safety. I realized that wasn't really the best fit for me. Medical information, a little bit more so. But I missed a lot of the relationships and patient interactions or HCP interactions. And through different networking opportunities, I realized that there was an MSL role. And within that specific example, it was creating an ITP specifically around this is where I want to go. I don't necessarily know too much about the role. So, who is it that I need to talk to? What are the skills? What are the understandings that I need to develop to position myself for an opportunity if or when it comes along, having no experience as an MSL? And I think that's one of the largest hurdles that a lot of people that come to me express is that, hey, I have clinical experience, or I'm burnt out, or I'm looking to make a transition. How do I do that? And for me specifically, it gave me an idea of the different informational interviews that I needed to set up. Who are the different resources that I could go to within my network? And then maybe 1 or 2 degrees of separation. LinkedIn was a tremendous help. At that time, they didn't necessarily have LinkedIn learnings. Kind of ages myself a little bit, but there's just so many tools now. And with MSL really isn't a secret anymore as it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. And now I feel like that with people who are in the role, that's probably the one of the nicest things about this specific, I would say, role within industry is that everybody's willing to help and you can message people and people will take time out to explain that to you. I had a limited pool of people that I knew that I could talk to, but long story short, that helped me identify and develop the skills that I needed so that when I got the opportunity, I was able to earn that and become an MSL. I'm
So I
hoping that
have,
answers your question.
yeah, yeah, and now I have more questions. So you were saying that you learned about sort of the concept of the individual and IDP. I'm just going to say because
Mhm.
I'm going to stumble over my words every single time I try to say it. But through the American Management Association, you said it had a different name at that time, and um,
Mhm.
and so I'm asking multiple questions. But the other thing too is like when I think of an IDP, I think of it as something that you're like your direct supervisor and you kind of come together on. Um,
Yeah.
but so was this something that was really more like a self evaluation, or was it
Uh,
kind of an assignment through the AMA to like for if you guys were workshopping things?
it was brought up as a topic within professional development, and they called it a professional development plan. But I feel like that is one component of an individual, the professional part. But when you transition it over to an individual development plan, it's more of a holistic approach. And that's why I like that term a little bit more. And then it started off as something that I wanted to do, but you brought up a really good point is I may want to do maybe 10, 15 things, but if it doesn't align with what my manager's vision is or what the company's capabilities or what they need current and future state, the probability of it getting supported from a company standpoint or a manager standpoint is pretty slim. So that's another big component of why an individual development plan is fantastic because it's you doing the work ahead of time to figure out where you want to go, and then the second part is sitting down with your manager, understanding that what tools and resources that they have that they can help get to where you want to go. But also, it's a roadmap for them too, because I mean, Chad, and for people who have managed, there's a lot of other directions that you're pulled. And this is one individual on your team. And you, as a manager, more coach or mentor, you're trying to give everything that you can to that individual in the bandwidth that you have allotted because everybody only has 24 hours in a day. And so with this, it really gave me a roadmap or like a reference that I could turn back to, and I don't have to consistently ask during one-on-ones of, okay, what is it that you're looking for? What developmental opportunities are of interest to you? Versus I can come back with, hey, I know you talked about you wanting to become a senior MSL. What are like, how do we position or look for opportunities to build your internal resume so that when I go and put you for a nomination for a senior MSL, there's enough there on that internal resume to justify for you to get that role. And so for me, it really streamlined me being able to be like curating a development plan for my team. And that's where it helps from a manager's perspective.
Yeah, it
Chad,
helps
I
you.
welcome your
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah, it helps you become an advocate or a champion
Mm-hmm.
for them, right? So even when, I mean, if you even just make it more of a basic thing from an MSL perspective and apply like a current role, like when you're with KOLs and when you're identifying, one of the biggest roles is to identify potential creating advocates for your company, whether it's for clinical trial support, whether it's for speaker program, I mean, whatever that might be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are that advocate. It is hard. I used to always say this to prospective clinical trial or PIs. Hey, my role is to be an advocate for the people in my area. It's hard for me to do that just on words alone, right? So can you provide me with as much information as you can, whether it's a clinical trial experience, what you're currently working on, what's your workload, all those types of things, so I can bring that information and it gives a clear direction of where people want to go. I would say the same thing would be applying with this. I think one of the things as leaders we have to, it is the balance, and we're always in the back of our mind trying to figure out, okay, how many projects are there? How many people get them? I mean, how are we making sure everybody's getting an opportunity? but this is a way to help kind of justify some of those things as well too, right? If it aligns to certain development opportunities and things like that that are specific and have already been captured, it's a much easier and clearer path to do. So I love what you've shared. I kind of want to peel it back a little bit, because this is a very simple concept in ways, but it can be very overwhelming. Like, where do we start? Like, where do I even begin with that? And so can you just maybe talk a little bit about how you approached even whether it's bucketing things about the things that bring you life or joy or happiness and things? I mean, how did you even start that process when you were creating your first IDP?
So again, I bucket it in three different ways. So one, I probably said this a couple times here, but where are you currently? What do you want to do? And how are you going to get there? And the first part is, where are you currently? That's where a lot of the self-introspection comes through. So what is it that brings you joy? What is it that you feel like you need to improve upon? Is there something or situations that may cause you to be uncomfortable? And if so, why is that? What areas do you feel like you can improve, but then also share and uplift? And like, what is it that really drives you? What's motivating you? And then I try to tie those into strategic alignment within what the company wants. So let's say if I have 15 things that I've identified that are drivers, maybe a few things that I need to improve upon. Um, Through that process, it's like, okay, well, what is it that I really need, that I'm looking to get to? And how am I going to align that with what my strategic goals are from a department or medical or company, whatever that looks like? Once you've kind of gotten that, it's questions that you can further define, is like, again, passions, interests, motivators, energizers, things like that. And you can transition that into like 4 or 5 different buckets, where it'd be um, when you're trying to talk to your boss of like, I want to do these things and these are how it will help the company. Is it going to enhance performance? Is it going to increase motivation, maybe within your department or cross functionally, increase adaptability, maybe career growth? And one thing to note is that the IDP isn't necessarily for only specific to vertical movement. It can be growth within a role or diagonal movement. So I don't want people to imagine this as only to get to the next step. There's a lot of components there, wherein even when you're evaluating people on, like, let's say during a mid-year or end of year, it's looking at it as lateral growth versus vertical. And so that's something to keep in mind. And the reason why I bring that up is because many people, I mean, I view the MSL role as the best gig in industry. And I know a lot of people who make it their career, and there's nothing wrong with that because they're rock stars at what they do. Other people want to move into different positions, which is great. And like you said, whether it's as an MSL or not, but this again, by having that self introspection and knowing that this is where you want to go. One of your previous podcasts was an individual who I think went into clinical development, and that was through some of that leadership. And her story resonated because it was, I like the MSL role, but it's not necessarily everything that I want to do. And so at that point, if she understands, like, okay, well, this isn't necessarily what I want to do. I want to explore something else. I may not even know what that is. But the fact that you've thought about it, you've communicated that to your manager, they're able to then ask you questions or put you in touch with individuals within the company to help you find those opportunities. And then, you're more narrowing your focus into getting to where you want to be. And that was like I like that example again of where an individual development plan can maybe speed up that process. It may not take 2-3 years, or I forgot how long that journey was for her. But within that, I mean, it's really understanding your why, communicating that to your manager so they can understand that, you gain alignment. And then through that whole process, you're getting support through your organization.
So you said a mouthful, which is great. I mean, and it's all great. It's great points and things to think about.
And you
I think,
also talked about a very proud leader moment, because you can kind of see his face, right? He is very proud of that experience in leadership and seeing Audrey grow where she wanted to grow.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things I was thinking through. Number one, as leaders, our KOLs are different, right? So our
Mhm.
KOLs are now our number one customers should be the people that we serve. But we are also, as part of that, we're a scientific bridge, right? Or, well, I'm sorry, we're a bridge. Whereas MSLs are a scientific bridge, really, from KOLs to the company. I mean, it's our opportunity. IDPs are a way, a vehicle, if you will, to help someone get where they want to go, and we are the bridge to be able to help find those opportunities for us. So, just even thinking through some of the examples, I'm curious. I'm sure you've had some on your team that have been very proactive with the IDP components. Some that maybe there is this hesitation potentially, or a little slower in the process. Can you talk a little bit about how that can potentially? Let's build on that. Like
Yeah.
as a leader, I mean, when you receive that with someone with a clear direction or a clear drive to move forward, how does that compare to one that doesn't? And then what's the results of that, right? I mean, of
Yeah.
being proactive in that way.
Yeah, I want to touch on one question. Mary, you'd asked me transitioning from being a peer to a leader, and Chad, I think you mentioned this, is that mindset shift change of before I was external facing, now I'm internal facing. That's probably another one of the biggest things that needs to occur within the first, I mean, the sooner the better. But I think that really helps set that new manager up for success, knowing who their quote unquote client is. And then going back to your question, the biggest thing or like a couple things there. So for people who take this seriously, and again, it's the first word is individual. And so the person who's doing it has to be vested within their own growth and whatever that looks like to them. That's probably the biggest part. So the ones that I have seen use it and it really help is that it is a live document. It's not a check the box. They're evaluating, looking at it quarterly or whatever frequency that they feel like. They're having those open dialogues with their manager. And for those who don't necessarily utilize it, it's more understanding why they are not using it. And more often than not, it's a confusion or maybe not realizing the power of an IDP. And once you can explain to them why we're using this, how it can help them, what are the steps that they need to do, and then how you can help them along the way, I have yet to encounter somebody who is not bought in after that point. But it's just really providing that clarity and so that they understand. You know, one of my previous managers always told me start with the why. If you don't get that buy-in initially, nobody's really going to do it. Like, why do I want to do something if I don't know why I'm doing it? But again, so for the ones that do utilize it, I think it speeds up that process. And selfishly, for me as a manager, it's a cheat sheet. I know exactly what you want, how, like, what tools and resources I can curate to help get you there. And it aligns with what your professional growth is. So for me, it's beneficial as well because I don't necessarily have to keep asking you the same questions. I have a live document that I can refer to. And in my downtime of when I'm, let's say, as an MSL, you're pre-call planning for KOL meetings. As a manager, we're pre-call planning for one-on-ones. And so that gives me an opportunity to review that. And then let's say something's happened within the last 2 weeks, or I have transparency to something cross-functionally or another opportunity that's coming through a congress or a speaking or roundtable. Am I able to position my team in for those opportunities because they've conveyed to me that this is important to them?
I'd like to actually throw in a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So, and this kind of goes to an Ask Chat Anything also, but it can be broad. So if somebody puts in their IDP and in your like annual discussion and your quarterly follow-ups, I want to move into a people leadership role, which was the Ask Chat Anything, but I'll just put it something else. Say they want to move into a medical strategy, into an in-house role.
Mm-hmm.
And so you guys get together and figure out these are some of the things you probably should accomplish and your
Yeah.
competencies you should really kind of hone. And then you make that role, you work towards it together, and then the person gets that position.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have seen this a lot over the past couple of years. A lot of people thought they wanted to be medical strategy, medical directors, and say they get there and they're like, I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
I thought I would have like more prestige in my interactions with thought leaders, but actually I'm like hardly interacting with anybody at all, and I miss that. I mean, so do people set up this vision for themselves and you support them, and then they get there and then they don't like it and they change their mind? Is there a way to head that off while you're kind of working through, let's say, this next year as they're working towards this goal? Like sort of like checking yourself along the way to make sure that this is truly what they want to do, to prevent making a move that ends up being a mistake. Foolproofing is what I'm trying to come up with. Sorry. Is there a way to foolproof that in an
Yeah.
IDP?
I think you raise a very important question. I think that onus, some of that it does go to the manager of based off of their experience and or organizational awareness. Do they themselves understand what that role is to even communicate that? So, for example, I was asked a question around a specific role and I didn't know. And I said, I think you'd probably be better off talking to an SVP or look on LinkedIn for the exact title that you're looking for and network and set up informational interviews that way. Now, if it's something that I am comfortable with and I'm able to network them, however, whether internal or external of the company itself, they should have enough of those interactions before they're making that jump. So whether I know or not, and that's why I said it's partially on the manager, but I would say if they've done their homework and they've had enough of the opportunity to talk to people, it can maybe circumvent that. Nothing's perfect, but I think you can do a good job of having them know the expectation of the role before they make a jump through informational interviews, networking, talking to recruiters like yourself, because you guys know the industry, what different roles and all that is. Cold. So I think there's a lot of different venues that you can do that with. Nothing is foolproof, but through a targeted approach, I think you can probably mitigate that, and an IDP helps in that process. Chad, I welcome what you think.
I think you hit on it a little bit earlier. I think as leaders, one of the things when we see those types of maybe things that are listed or different ideas or brainstorming, I think the first thing is making sure that the why, that we truly understand and the person and what their skill sets are from our viewpoint. I think we should be able to share that feedback in a open and honest way. Not necessarily you aren't built for this role, but if you want this role, here are some things that that I see that you really need to stretch yourself on. And then that would be one. And the second would be have they clearly articulated their why about who they are, what they want to be. I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts. Sorry if I'm a broken record, Mary, but I mean, it does go back to the whole thing of me writing a personal mission statement a couple of years ago, when trying to understand where I wanted to go in the back half of my career. And being able to write that out was a clear mark for me. It was an anchor point when I had conversations with different companies for different roles and opportunities, that if it didn't align to what my mission statement was, which was really aligned to where I think my giftings are, my neurodivergence, whatever you want to call it, right? I think, because that's what it
I've never heard
is.
anybody say my giftings, i.e., my neurodivergence.
Yeah, it is. I don't view it. Listen, that's a whole nother topic. I think it now it's listed as a disability. I think it really unlocks a unique ability in ways to think outside the box. But nevertheless, I mean, if it that was my anchor point, and I think that's important to really understand kind of and that's hard, and that's a journey in ways. So I think that's the piece too. Instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm bored with my," I mean, we got to know what's driving the need to change, right? Is it because I'm bored in my current role, and so I want to look for some? Oh, this seems kind of nice, or I want to maybe pursue this. I mean, that's a component, and there's nothing wrong with exploring different ideas, but knowing yourself and knowing where you enjoy things, where things are time sucks for you. I laugh to your point, Mary, on some of these things. What does the MSL always say? The majority, I hate administrative things. I hate entering in Viva on time. I hate doing this, expense reports. But yet you're going to move to a role that requires you to be organized and do tactics and to streamline and to keep on top of different process. I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure potentially, or being miserable, right? So I think that
I have to add in here, because I am neurodivergent, and that is, my doctor said that I'm bored with mundane and routine tasks.
Yeah.
But I can be organized with things I really enjoy. So that's why the complaints with the administrative tasks, because they're routine and mundane.
Good point.
So that is my gifting of neurodivergence. That's how I am too.
So so I think that that's all that I would add, and those things that you already shared, Kunal, on that. What do you think the biggest barriers are to people even focusing on their IDP or even starting that whole journey?
I think it's a lack of awareness. You can't really do something if you don't know about it. And the other thing too is putting in the work to doing it. A lot of the times, I think organizations mandate some sort of professional development or career map, but it's more check the box. Similarly with, I would say, even like one-on-ones or mid-years or end of year discussions, some people approach it as, hey, I'm just going to get this done because I have to. Others take the opportunity to really put in some thought and have valuable discussions and guide them and direct them for what they have to do for the beginning of the year or latter half. So, I mean, again, I'll harp on the fact that it's an individual development plan. However much you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And I mean, that's with almost anything, right? But yeah, I think a lot of people, the initial part of not necessarily doing one is because they don't know. And they may be doing it in a certain way but it's not as formalized or structured as something like this. And then with the other components too, where you're getting manager buy-in, organizational alignment, those things also play a huge factor, because if there isn't that congruency, you're probably not going to get the support that you want.
That's a great point.
It is. Mary, I'm going to turn over to you for a second. I've got to think about how I want to ask my next question. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I was actually going to chime in a little bit. I didn't realize this whole time that I have been doing IDPs with my team since 2008. And,
nice.
But I created a document. It's probably in Comic Sans, who knows? But the headline was always, where do you want to be in whatever year was next? And so I had some things that were accomplishments from this current year, and then talking about professional goals, areas that they want to improve on and why. And it actually had some personal goals in there too, not for me, but as they say, you write a goal down, then it's like it's in ink, and you're a little more committed to it. And I wish I could say that every time I did a one-on-one with somebody, I pulled that sucker right back up. I actually have them right over here, the ones for 2024. I mean, they're right in my desk drawer over here. But I pull them up probably about quarterly
Yeah.
and see if, and but what I see is I have a lot of room for improvement. So I'm going to write myself an IDP on how to improve my IDPs. That's my goal. But no,
I like
this
that.
is what I love about y'all's profession is that there's so much I take from it and use in leading my own team. And this is really going to drive me to be better about it. So that's my 2 cents. Wasn't really a question, but I am so grateful that we've gotten you in a 2-on-1 scenario instead of in a big room where I get to ask you questions and hear both of you guys interact. So now I'm going to shut up. Are you good? You got your question?
Yeah, thanks for
Can I
just
add something really quick to that? Because
Yeah.
it sparked something. Another important component of that is that an IDP is short term, long term. So probably between maximum 3 to 5 years is what I would say. After that time, the industry changes so quickly. So I would focus more on the short term related to that. And then the way that I also, again, Chad, going back to like the buckets part, is once you have your purpose or goal, you're going to then tie that back to an objective or a learning objective. And that's how you're going back to the strategic alignment. And so I like to have people that I work with develop that and then also come to the table with the solutions. As a manager, for anybody who's listening, always come with the solution. Everybody can complain, but when you have something to work off of, it's way more easier. So that kind of helps where you're setting the table, taking off the onus, and you're not necessarily having them connect the dots for you. You've done your homework already.
I love it. That's and this is going to be one of my short takes at some point on my walks. But you just hit that on the 1-3. It's I saw something the other day on the 1-3-1 method, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you identify that here's a problem. You come up with 3 different solutions, and then you propose of those 3. You even say, I think that this is the one that we should move forward. What are your thoughts? There's a big difference between
Mm-hmm.
going to someone and taking that type of action that shows your strategic thinking, all those, and it builds trust, right? So I
Yeah.
love that idea. I think you hit on something earlier I want to key in on as we get close to wrapping things up. It is even sharing like what's the WIFM, right? When you even think about it from the leadership perspective, if you go to your direct manager and say, look, this is going to be a benefit for us both if we do this. Look at the potential impact of me pursuing this, whatever that is, on my developments. This is how it's going to benefit. I can see how it will benefit the company as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That only increases the opportunity for advocacy to make those things happen. So I love that idea of really even showing that there's mutual benefit out of all this. It's going to only elevate the team, et cetera. My question that I was thinking about earlier, well, I've got 2, and then we'll wrap things up. Number 1 is how do you multiply this across your teams, right? As far as the buy-in and IDPs, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you beyond it's a requirement from the company.
Yeah.
What's another way you think we can maybe improve buy-in?
Training is
Question.
probably the rollout and training on how it's proposed. Again, if you can buy in from the person who's doing it and they understand the importance of it and why they are doing it and how it can help them, that will perpetually increase the amount of people that are actually using the tool. The other thing that I would say is raise the floor. If you're great, get people onto your level. And what are you doing to get them to do that? And if this is a tool that's working for you, on cross-functional meetings, go to your HR business partner and show them like, hey, this is what I've been using. This is how it's been working. How do we implement this across the organization? And here's a pilot. These are things that work. These are things that didn't. Um, yeah, I guess that perpetual improvement and always trying to improve, never being okay with the status quo, pushing yourself. That's a hallmark of one of the great leaders is you're not working in a silo by yourself. Your success is dependent on your people and the people that you work with. So as long as you're willing and able to do that, and proactively, I would say, even like you said, the 1-3-1 method is fantastic. And if you see something, then you can have a chance to actually improve it. And I think that goes a long way, not just for what it says about your character, your internal resume, all that stuff, but a vested interest in the company and the career growth of others as well. So I would
Well,
say roll out training, sharing, like shout it from the rooftops. The more people that know, hopefully the more people that use it.
I would be curious. Yeah, I love all that. I think one of the things I'd be curious about is, and Mary, maybe this is something you can do kind of in your background, with all the people that you talk with, those that have IDPs. I wonder if their commitment or longevity at companies is any different for those that really have that versus others that don't.
I was just thinking that. I have
Because
that question. I have that
yeah,
question
That's
on here.
pretty cool.
the more we create, I mean, here's my why behind that, right? The more, when we think about the whole servant leadership model around creating ownership, I think is one of the biggest things. And if when you build from the ground up versus top down, you build in that ownership, people want and they feel committed, they're invested. They see the benefit for them to continue on the journey, et cetera. So I think that the more we can get buy-in for that and help that process, the better. So my last question for you is, like, what would you have you ever thought about incorporating this into questions in an interview process, or even what if someone's brought part of their IDP as part of the interview process and even lined out that, hey, like in 3 years, I'd like to do this, right? Because I think that there's always this, like, do I say I'm driven and I want to do other things, or do I say I'm going to focus on the role that I'm currently in, et cetera? So if they brought this to you and they shared that journey, how would you receive that as a potential hiring manager?
I think I would view it more so as work smarter, not harder. And if they're coming to me with a cheat sheet on how I'm going to help this person, that's great. I mean, for me specifically, I don't know if people still do this, Mary. You probably have more awareness than I do, but brag books, where it's everything that you've accomplished within the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years. And it's a visual representation of your resume and your accomplishments. That really helps because that tells me where you've been. And then you can walk me through the process of, this is where I want to be in 3 years, and this is how I'm going to get there. And this is the proof that I've done it before, or I know how to get there. Um, so I kind of incorporate those. I bring a brag book. It's my little cheat code for interviews to be like, you've seen my resume. Here's living proof that you can flip through on how I did it. And we can talk through that. But specifically in IDP, I have yet to have somebody actually build out a fully baked IDP during an interview and walk me through it. But that would be great.
Yeah, maybe not during the interview, but as part, like as part of that, when they ask about development opportunities and if they had something outlined, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's. But you already addressed that question. I mean, that it would be well received. While we were talking, I'm sorry, this is
That's
my
okay.
multitasking role, right? Of what we do. Like I just got on Copilot and said, okay, I'm interested in creating a structure for IDP. So give me a template for doing this. And it's amazing. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this is not difficult to do. I think the
No.
difficult part is stopping and assessing and thinking about things, et cetera. So it's all at our fingertips, but the when you start separating people out, it's those that are committed to taking the step and carving out time and reflecting. I think that we don't like to reflect sometimes. We'd rather get on our phones and just zone out, right? But what do we do? It's the small things that add up over time and lead to success and satisfaction. So don't sell yourself. We've talked about this before too, Mary, right? Why would you cheat yourself out of being a part of something that you really enjoy doing? And so having that self-assessment will set you up for success. Mary, you're dying to say something, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Oh, I was just going to talk about romantic relationship with AI, but I decided not to.
Listen, I'm all about efficiency, especially when I can go do some other things that are fun and playing. Right?
No, you like the AI tools.
Why
You
reinvent the
like the chat.
wheel? Why reinvent the wheel,
I,
Mary?
I'm with you. Why? Why reinvent the wheel?
This has been a great conversation. I think there's been a lot of great takeaways and,
It's awesome.
um, yeah, really helpful things. Thanks for sharing a lot about your journey. I think we need to have you back on because you mentioned the topic about brag books, and I think we should explore that a little bit.
Okay, I wrote it down.
When we think about that, that has this connotation of sales driven, but you're right. I mean, in reality, we sell ourselves every day. That's part of that's part of the secret sauce, right? So we'll definitely have to have another conversation about that to explore it more. So, Kunal, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share a little bit about your journey and some of the keys to your success. Love that we get to have this venue to be able to develop and learn from one another, and can't wait to have you back on.
The pleasure was all mine. I thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been fantastic to learn from you guys and just share a little bit of, like you said, my journey and something that I'm really passionate about and related to servant leadership. And again, a dedicated plan on how to get people to where they want to be. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And as always, if there's anything that I can ever do, please let me know.
Oh, we will take you up on that. That is for sure. So don't
Yes.
worry about that, Kunal. Listeners, thanks so much again for hopping on for another episode of MSLead Chronicles. Be sure that to apply some of these things, try to put them in practice as early as today, and look forward to hearing feedback and results for that. Remember, leaders don't develop in isolation. Leaders develop from other leaders. And until next time, have a good one and lead well.